And we're live. It is Bob Cooney, but you know that, and I think you know this guy, Charlie Fink, back for a second webinar. We must have done okay with the first one. I didn't piss you off enough. You came back.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing to you.
So I want to apologize. Kevin Williams was going to join us today as well, and they moved his flight up, and he couldn't make. He's literally boarding the plane right now. But I did have a conversation with him before, and he gave me a few things to pass along to the audience. So from IAAPA Paris, Charlie, thanks for joining, man.
Sure, my pleasure.
So how's Los Angeles treating you? You just
well, it's finally the heat wave has broken, and it's beautiful in the high 70s today. So it's pretty nice here. The move has been harder than I thought from New York because we're trying to downsize, and we're taking 25 pounds of shit and pouring it into a 5-pound bag. The other thing is, for better or worse, we bought kind of a fixer, but it's exhausting. So many of the basic home systems don't even work. There's a broken window. There's just a lot of, before you even start thinking about renovating, you have to take care of all these little things, because we're going to live with that for a year before anything is really seriously renovated in this house. So it's been emotionally draining. It's been physically, packing and moving is physically draining. I'm almost 60 years old. I would not want to do it again.
I have to do it I do it every 5 days, but
I know, but all your stuff fits into a couple of suitcases. And I have to say, although in my fantasies I want to live like that, it was awfully nice to see, all of my VR stuff and my guitars and computers, come off that truck and get back to work.
Yeah.
So I think one of the bad things is that, my wife isn't working or she's retired. And so a lot of the move is falling onto her, as it naturally would have anyway. And of course, once I got my computers running, I'm back at work. So, that's also kind of exhausting, and you never seem to be able to catch up. I just got back from Enterprise Technology Wearable Summit in Dallas, which was a enterprise focused event. And it was really interesting. As I've been saying, I think that many people's first exposure to VR will come in the workplace and in public places through LBVR over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see the industrial trends starting to accelerate and scale, because millions of people in the workforce will be using VR and AR every day. In the coming years, it'll be tens of millions. So,
it was the precursor to the smartphone, which was the BlackBerry, right? And everybody had a BlackBerry.
Mm-hmm.
And what that did is
it was the precursor to the PC. People were seeing PCs in retail before they ever contemplated having one in their home.
Yeah, and what the BlackBerry taught us is that we could get access to the internet away from our desk. And then once we realized that that's possible, we wanted it all the time. And then when the web happened, we're like, why can't I get email? Why can't I get the web? Right. And the iPhone happened, it changed everything. Yeah. And so all of this stuff often happens at work. And I totally agree with you.
So, and again, it happens in public places, because, those places not only can provide the amount of space you need for a meaningful VR experience, but they also can provide the presence of other people, which, in presence and being social in VR, as you know, is a very important part of the experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And Damon just said, one of the things he's noticed is a lot of exposure to VR is coming from mobile VR. I think that's past. I think that, and that's a bad experience. And I think in the very early stages, that's what was happening. And I think mobile VR as a consumer product is changing now. And we're going to talk about the Quest today, because that's the new definition of mobile VR, and it doesn't suck. By the way,
pretty great.
Paris, thought I would cheer to everybody for joining. We just passed with this webinar 600 subscribers to this webinar series, and so I want to.
Wow, here you go. Many people getting a lot of great lessons at the foot of the master.
Yeah, no, I just want. You're too kind. Anyway, so thank you guys all for sharing and for the feedback that I get, and And it's gotten a little weird. I was walking down the trade show today, and some guy from Saudi Arabia stopped me in the aisle and wanted to take a selfie with me.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, welcome to my world. You're nerd famous now.
Yeah. Oh man. So let's
Well, I thought the plan here was I was going to interview you.
I love
about IAAPA in Paris from Los Angeles, because honestly, I have a terrible case of FOMO, and I'm dying to hear about what you saw.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was so I did talk to Kevin Williams, and I think he did a count, and it was 60 something companies showing VR at IAAPA Paris. And IAAPA Paris is about...
Is it as big as IAAPA in the US? Because there were 60 something
like
in Orlando.
Third to half the size.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you extrapolate that to what we might see in Orlando, I'm expecting well over 100 companies showing virtual reality products in Orlando, which will be up from 80 something last year. And so and it keeps getting better. Like there was a lot of good shit on the floor this time. And 3 years ago there was some stuff, and most of it was bad. And 2 years ago there was more stuff, and some of it was okay. And then last year we started seeing some like, wow, there's a lot of decent stuff. And now this year it's all actually, there's a lot of good stuff happening, and there's so much of it, it's confusing people. And that's a big challenge right now, is it's so confusing. What do you buy?
Right, and it's all priced very competitively. So
and the
it's
floor
not a financial decision.
Yeah, and so the big thing, I'm just going to cut to it, is there were a bunch of companies showing Oculus Quest based multiplayer solutions. And I've been writing and blogging and telling people one-on-one to just be careful about building a solution based on Quest, because the Oculus terms of service in the business edition specifically excluded arcade use. And I've been talking to Carlos and the powers that be at Oculus, and explaining to them that what they were doing was a lot of entrepreneurs for failure, because they were putting their scarce resources in.
No, you're frozen.
Okay, sorry. And so what in essence, Oculus, by being silent on the Quest licensing, we're setting up entrepreneurs potentially for failure. And so I got word today from Oculus that they're going to be announcing next week at OC6 that they're going to include arcade licensing in the Quest Business Edition. They're going to be giving tools for solution providers to control the Guardian system, which is what was stopping people from doing free roam. And that platform will be available in Q4. And so that's going to change the economics of the whole, because in Paris, there were a bunch of companies showing Quest solutions for as little as $30,000 for a 4-player system, where Hologate's been dominating the market at $100,000, and now all of a sudden you're talking about I was seeing turnkey solutions for 30 grand, 35, 40 grand, and so it's
half the price,
less than half the price.
Yeah. Well, that was inevitable. And when the Quest has meaningful multiplayer experiences that you can organize yourself with 3 friends or 4 friends or 8 friends, it could have a potential impact on LBVR.
And you're talking about the consumer market, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So I'm also eating some Belgian chocolates that were brought to me by a client at the show. So
nice.
And chocolate.
I'm virtually tasting it.
Yeah. So look, the consumer market still isn't happening, right? We're not seeing any. Are you seeing any indicators that Quest is being successful in the consumer market?
The indicators are that they can't keep Quest in stock. I haven't.
That could be supply chain. Like, who the fuck knows what that means? Is that like what is that actually?
Well, I mean, if you go to Amazon, let's see how long the wait is. There was a wait a while ago.
Because when Go released, it sold out, right? And then in 2 months, it fell off a cliff. So you had all the fanboys, the VR fanboys, and all the developers, and You know, they put in their orders, and everybody that's a VR enthusiast got Go, and then nobody else bought one. And I'm just wondering, but you haven't seen any numbers published yet, have you?
No, they don't publish the numbers. Let's see what the deal is with the Quest. No, it's available. You can get it in one day for $399.
Yeah. And so anyway, I just don't know. I'm just curious. I'm waiting to see some numbers.
I think. Well, first of all, very often these companies don't report numbers. HTC has never reported numbers. PlayStation has, because they think the numbers are good, but they have not been really seeing insanely good growth. So now they're not doing it anymore.
Yeah. And
that's what Samsung did, right? They were like, "Oh my God, we've sold 5 million Gear VRs." Then they never made another peep.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, and Samsung is going to come out with a new Gear VR this year. What do you know anything about that?
I do not.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't either, other than it's supposed to be Kevin Williams calls it a Quest killer, whatever that means.
Well, I mean, it would be great if there were more standalone devices. I was kind of disappointed to learn that the Vive Cosmos is not a standalone device, but it's a tethered device.
Yeah. Well, Pico's coming out with the Neo 2 in November, and that's going to be built on the Qualcomm 845 chipset, which is a generation.
That's the newest one, right?
And they're going to be building a module for hand tracking and a bunch of stuff on top of it. And so I think that product is going to come out in November, and hopefully they're going to, or maybe even October. So that's
all of this is good news for LBVR because it means that prices are coming down. Yeah. But it also is causes me to bring up the cautionary tale of what happened to LBVR in the 90s, because the home kind of caught up with us technologically, and at the same time, the public's imagination went to the internet.
Yeah.
So there are similar risks today.
Yeah, and that's why I think they're building. I think location-based entertainment is about social experiences. Is becoming more and more so. And so the locations, the arcades, and when I say VR arcade, it's the ones that are running basically room-scale Vive systems. The ones that have been successful have built those around areas where people could gather and have social. So here in Paris, there's a place called Illucity. And it's a 10,000 square foot VR park, for better term. And it's owned by a company called Imagis. And Imagis is the distributor, they're the largest distributor, I believe, of equipment and services to the movie theater industry globally. And so their claim to fame was when motion picture projection went to digital, none of the movie theater operators wanted to pay for it. And so it was stuck. And what they did was they came out and said, fine, we'll finance it. And they put together a financing package, and it just swept through. And now everything's digital distribution and digital projection. And so now they're looking and incubating this Illucity to try to figure out what makes sense in movie theaters for VR.
Right. As they shed screens,
I froze.
What goes in their place?
Am I back?
Yes.
Awesome. And so what they're doing is, so this place in Paris is 10,000 square feet, but it's only about 3,500 square foot of actual attraction and 6,000 square foot of common area and place for groups to come and people to hang out and socialize. And we were talking about, they said
that's what Two Bit Circus does.
Exactly, though that one's a bit under attractioned, I think, right? I mean, they need more stuff there to do, but
they're going to iterate their way to the right balance. Those are some pretty smart guys.
Super smart guys. I totally agree with you. And so I think that the VR stuff has to continue to build around social experiences. And if they do that, as VR happens in the home, and whether that happens in 5, I don't know. It's going to happen eventually. I think it's further out than most people expect. When that happens and people are more isolated, they're going to continue to crave that social connection. And that's where out-of-home entertainment is going to continue.
Well, that's the theory.
That's the theory. Yeah. I got my chips on that one. A few chips. Yeah.
We thought we could harness the internet to help us avoid the fate of non-internet companies, but it didn't work.
Yeah. So a couple of comments here, and this is, also for the replay guys who don't get to see the comments. A lot of people watch this on replay, Damon's is a major thing I've noticed with introducing Quest to some of the customers. The number one statement they say is it's like getting a console for VR. And I think that's what Quest and Oculus is hoping for, but I'm going to challenge that. So when I buy an Xbox or a PlayStation and I buy a console, I think it still comes bundled with one controller, right? And for $40, I can buy another controller or 2 or 3 or 4, and we can play together. With a Quest, if I want to play with my friends, it's $400 a pop. Like if you want a 4-player Quest system, nobody. So I still think that people want to play games together, and I'm not sure how that plays out. I'd love your opinion on that one.
Well, we shall see. I mean, it depends partly on the quality of the home systems and partly on the quality of their content. And it may be that that's good enough, that Vader Immortal is good enough to make you say when you're outside the void, well, I just did Vader Immortal on the Quest. I don't need to do Star Wars at the void.
Yeah.
Just a competing theory.
Yeah.
And by the way, if anybody has a Quest and you have not done Vader Immortal, you're really missing out on one of the best character-based narrative storytelling VR experiences that you can have in an arcade or really anywhere. So, hats off to ILM X Lab for really succeeding. And I would say it's among what I would call the definitive pioneering works of VR, along with Alamet from Eugene Chang and Penrose Studios, which is free for almost all devices on Steam.
Yeah, and I think there was hope that Vader Immortal would become a bit of a system seller, and I feel like Oculus has done a horrible job of promoting it. You're not seeing it in the media. Like they couldn't.
Yeah, that was a bit of a head scratcher, because you know what I did? I got the Quest and I needed to review it like the next day, so I did 10 minutes of 20 things, including Vader Immortal, and then I wrote about it. Sorry, people, but that's what happens sometimes when you're writing. And so then I packed it up for the move, right? So I finally get it out again. I'm like, oh, this is great. And I put it on, and I'm looking at the library. It's oh yeah, I never finished Vader Immortal, so let me go do that. And it was 40 minutes of astonishment, and it just got better and better as you did it.
And that's episode 1. There's 2 more episodes coming, right?
Right, and you could swear that the robot companion, I forget what their name is, that's played by who is Whoopi Goldberg or somebody. It is not only hilarious and extraordinarily well written, but you really believe. You suspend your disbelief, and you start to believe in their sentience. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And you can't do that experience and not say, "Oh yeah, this is the future."
Yeah, absolutely.
So more experiences like that would, I think, challenge the best V-arcades on a content basis, and people guard their pennies jealously. I think that in that sense, Dreamscape kind of has the right idea, using the motion and everything. I know Hologate just introduced some motion platforms. And these are things you'll never have at home.
And there's a question about Hologate Blitz, and they just announced their pricing at around $200,000 for a 4.
Right, and you've got Omni Arena, which is based on competition.
Yep.
Right, that is the whole idea of the Omni system. Were they at the show?
They were not at the show. They haven't. They're focusing on the North American market this year, and then I think next year they'll be going to Europe. So
they do a very good job of staying in your face. Which is really, really important for people who are marketing, platforms that they want to sell to third parties. So you've got to really be visible to those third parties where they are. I think Hologate, has done a terrific job of that. They're just everywhere, as I'm sure VR Studios was there.
Yeah.
They're very.
I got a little video montage of some of the stuff I took that I'm going to play.
Cool.
But one of the things that I didn't get the video of that I want to talk about, because you talk about these great experiences, you talk about Dreamscape, which has always been one of my favorites.
Repetition is their challenge.
Huh?
Repetition is their challenge.
Yeah.
Because, in LA and New York and London and some of these places where they're building them, the same thing with the Void, you have enough new foot traffic to offset your weak group sales and your weak repeat player statistics. But if you go into a smaller city, even a large size small city, like let's say Kansas City, Missouri, or Tampa,
yeah,
you're dead without group sales and repeat play.
yep.
So I don't. We'll see what happens. I'm sure if Dreamscape goes in there with AMC and doesn't succeed, we'll be the last to know. But I think those, the audience and success metrics when you're in Times Square are very different than your audience and your success methods when you're in the Passaic Mall.
Yeah, totally.
Or Paramus Mall.
And I just lost your video, by the way, so I'm not sure if that's me or you.
Tell me when I'm back.
Yeah. And so anyway, so I played at Elucity, this place I was telling you about. I played an experience called Toyland, and it was I might have to refresh my browser to see you, but I know what you look like, Charlie. So
should I turn off?
You're good. No, everybody says they see you, so it's just me. And so Toyland was amazing. It was done by Backlight, which is the company that did Eclipse, which is kind of a 4-player escape room with a haptic floor, and you're in a space station and you're trying to get through it. But this particular attraction was produced by Elucidi and developed by Backlight, and it's one of the best VR experiences I've done, hands down. So it was basically, you're going in, you're a toy, you're a team of toys. Oh, you're back, and you're going into defeat the evil giant monkey and his toy minions, and you start out in a seat, in a D-box seat, and there's 6 players. It's running on HTC Vive, 6-player Vive setup, Lighthouse, and you sit in a D-box seat. And you're in a helicopter and it's vibrating, and the sergeant comes out. He does his sergeant toy shit. And then you land and you get out of the seat and you do a free roam experience. Then you get back in the seat. Now the seat's a car and it's taking you. And then you get out. And it's this multimodal between a seated motion simulator in really short increments. So you never get motion sick.
Nomadic does that really well with their...
with the helicopter piece, with the helicopter ride, and
the train at the beginning is awfully effective as well.
Yeah, and so this is 30 minutes, 25.
I never understood how we couldn't go out of the train we came in on, but the helicopter is way cooler. The helicopter is way cooler. Why not? Why did we come in on this thing?
Yeah. And so I thought this thing was amazing, and it's that multimodal experience of going from a seated motion sim to a free roam and then back and forth again was amazing. And so to me, by far the hit of my trip to Paris, and one of the best VR experiences I've done. The art direction was amazing. It was a combination of 3D and 2D. So like you shoot the gun and the little gun splat effects were in 2D in cartoon, but everything else was in 3D. The music was great. The voice acting was great. The story was great. And so if you get to Paris, check out Elucidi and play Toyland, and I think they're going to try to license that out to other locations, and I think we'll see it proliferate next year.
I think that that brings me to my favorite pet VR topic, which is I think there needs to be some extreme standardization so that DreamWorks best titles can go where the people are, and that goes for the Void and Sandbox VR. If you've got a great experience, it should be on. You've got a great movie, it should be on as many screens as possible, whether they're owned by your company or by your competitors, because it's all about what the people want. That was, of course, the great thing about Beat Saber is its portability. It's not tied to, any free roam VR platform.
And I will also, I also want to talk about, you bring it up, I'll talk about Beat Saber. So Beat Saber is available in an arcade cabinet from a company called vArsenal. And there's a whole bunch of stuff being written about vArsenal, and there was some.
I mean, I think Exit Reality has a box that runs Beat Saber as well. Yeah, but anybody can run Beat Saber in a public place.
Anybody can run Beat Saber in a VR arcade setup, but as far as an arcade cabinet goes for a family entertainment center, this company vArsenal acquired the exclusive rights to that outside of Asia. And I've been tracking its performance in family entertainment centers. And I was just in Chicago last week and went to a GameWorks, which is kind of like an arcade that's pivoting towards esports. And it was a Friday afternoon. It was probably 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There were about 12 people in the whole venue. 8 of them that were there lined up to play Beat Saber. And they had come just to play it. So it's still a phenomenon, and people are hearing about it and they're wanting to play it. And it's the most popular thing by far at VR World in New York, partly because of its spectator value. Yes, and I think, but people were going there not for spectator; they were going there to play, and they were lined up to play. There's something about that game that has really captured the imagination.
But again, it's on Quest, and it's pretty great on Quest, I gotta say.
Yeah, no, it's great at everything. Once you're in it, it doesn't matter what you're on.
And it is, I gotta say, if you play it for half an hour, I mean, you're sweating. It's
yeah. And Paul's asking if it's needed in a cabinet. And I think the cabinet thing, what the Arsenal has figured out was how to run it unattended.
That's right.
They've been able, so these arcades that put it out is no attendant. You walk up, they figured out how to get people to put on a headset, do all that shit without.
And I know they've had some success selling them into sports bars and venues like that.
And so I'm gonna see if I can bring this video that I just threw together. So,
awesome! I think you may want to turn down the sound of the video.
I got it yesterday though.
VR foosball, I like it.
So that's called Whiplash. Now, why the fuck would you call your product Whiplash? That's my first attempt. My first question. But
why don't they call it VR foosball?
Yeah, and I just thought and no one was going on it. It was it was terrifying, and so I don't know. That was just one I grabbed really quickly and thought was terrible. Now, this is a product from a company called Kynoa, Kynoa, and it's one of my favorites. And I've seen it at the show a few times. And it's a virtual foosball table, and it's a 4-player virtual.
Yeah, I love this.
I don't think I got any gameplay footage, unfortunately. But what I love about this game is a couple of things. One is you put it on, and the table. One of the great things about VR is the table is twice as big in virtual than it is in real life.
Yeah.
And so you get this sense of splendor, and it's huge. You're in this big arena. And then they add gamification to foosball that you can't do in real foosball. Like you push a button, and the player can break free of his rod, and you can make him run in between the players to try to score a goal. And if he hits another player, he crashes into a million people, and then he's anchored back onto the post again. And so it's only $30. I think it was $30,000 for a 4-player system, which is $7,500 per player's position, which is pretty much as cheap as anything in the VR space that I've seen out there. And it's super compact, really fun, really different, great spectator event. And so it's it's very different. And you can run tournaments around it, you run leagues around it. So I was a big fan of this one. So do you remember this from the old days, Charlie? The old flyer? What was that? The Evans and Sutherland hang gliding?
Yeah, and there's another one that you can buy for the home. It's like $700, and it's like laying on a massage table.
Yeah, and there's one Icaros, which is another one, which is really hard.
Icaros is the one.
Icaros, it's more than that. It's $10,000. It's not.
Oh, is it?
700.
I thought it was a cheaper version.
Yeah, but
version.
Yeah, and they couldn't get this one working. The technician was working on it when I went there. And
we see those in a lot of larger VR arcades.
Yeah. And then, just lots of motion simulators. Lots of generic motion simulators.
And they're all like 8-player racing.
Well, But I just love the reaction to their businesses. And what this was video it was like
Work in a box.
And then lots of things like egg things you see everywhere. And I love this. This was the in the bouncy place. I don't know if you can see this, but this is where all the bounce houses are. They actually had VR on inflatable. That's when you know you've jumped the shark. I didn't get a chance to do it. I just ran out of time. And then this was really interesting. It hasn't actually been deployed anywhere yet, but it's not interactive. It's a passive ride. And it's 6 degrees of freedom. 47 volts.
Oops, it looks like we lost Bob, so it's just me. No, it looks like he may be joining back in. The lesson here is don't run a large webinar for Paris with questions.
And so, yeah, lots of Chinese.
Were the guys back with the pommel horse that you rode? What was that? They had a pommel horse and rocked, and you were being chased, through a forest where you had to duck under trees while a giant tried to get you.
I was sick as a dog. I was just.
Oh man, I couldn't walk for half an hour afterwards.
And so this was really interesting. This is from a company called Diver. And or the company's called Ballast, and the product is called Diver. And they were the kind of one of the first people to come up with a waterproof headset built into a scuba mask. And now what they're doing is they're partnering with companies that are bringing these solutions into markets. And what these guys have done is they've come up with a kind of like one of those underwater jet ski things that you would do, and it's anchored in place. But what they have is they have a fan that blows the water on you, and then in the front it cavitates, so you have vibration.
Right, so it's like it feels like a real propulsion. It does,
and you're in the water. And one of the cool things is when you do VR in the water, there's no motion sickness. It like whatever it is in your head.
Right, because you're already basically weightless.
And so they've created this experience where you're following this sea turtle down in the ocean, and there's sharks and stuff, and it's really freaking cool. And we're starting to see more realistic underwater stuff. You go swim with dolphins and stuff, and and so I got a kick out of this. And this is when I think I saw the shark.
Yeah, it looks like it has a nice small footprint.
Well, you put it in the pool, right? So you could put 6 of these in a swimming pool.
Oh, so that's for water
or a resort that has a pool or a hotel or anything, right? Yeah. I mean. And so this is another one that I did, and this was really good. And I did some interviews. So it was basically a 3DOF motion base on a raft. And I hope I caught the end of it in video there. How was it? Amazing?
Yeah, I love it. It was so real.
Did you like it?
Yeah.
Have you done other VR?
Yeah.
Have you done other virtual reality? How was this compared to the other stuff you've done?
One of the best. Yeah,
one of the best?
Yeah, this is better.
And so I did it, and I don't like motion, but I was able to get through most of it without getting any kind of motion sickness. But the economics of this are really strong. It's like 30-something thousand for 2 units. And they have And they have 4 or 5 different peripherals you can put on top of it. So they have one that's a snowboard and one that's a sled, and they have different films to it. And so really, yeah, they were using the Samsung WMR headset. Damon, good catch on that one. But it was a company called Modi Maj. And Modi Maj is the company that does the VR bicycle thing that tours around with the Tour de France. And so they set up this touring exhibit. So they're kind of like a brand activation company. And they also had, the Jurassic World from VRC that Dave and Buster's rolled out. They had that film there on a motion simulator. And I think they're negotiating for the rights of that outside of Dave and Buster's to bring it to Europe, for what that's worth.
All right, cool. Thank you.
And this was VR Studios. They're VR. Now we'll get into some of the Quest stuff. So now you're starting to see, like, this is starting to use travel. So these guys are using Windows R and the ancient backpacks. This experience is terrible. This was a new one. So these guys are using Lego pieces of gloves to build their arena. And they're doing hand tracking with gloves and IMUs. And you can see here, you see down there that bucket of used white gloves down at the bottom? So they were handing out like disposable gloves to people to put underneath the gloves. I obviously have no clue what it's like to run a retail operation, but I've never seen these guys. And the hand tracking.
We lost you for a second. The hand tracking was good.
Now this is a company in Lyon, France. And what they're doing is really interesting. It's long story-driven. They're doing 5 wireless. It's a keep it wireless. They claim to be able to do 4-player, but there's only one company they're doing 4-player that I actually saw. We'll talk about that at the end. But they're doing 45-minute experiences, and they've just done a new one that's 2 parts, which is an hour and a half. You do 45 minutes at a time.
And what are they charging for that?
Do you remember what they're charging? Oh, my producer went to sleep on the couch. Charging 30 euros. And I love the idea of longer form story-driven content, and I think we need to see more of that. And they've been operating for a year and a half, and they've produced all the films themselves, and now they're just starting to license. So they were able to pay the production cost of 4 VR attractions just based on their own operation in one location. So the economics of that is working for them, which I thought was really interesting. Now this is a new company called Hero Zone. They're out of Belgium. This is one of the questions. They built a 4-player arcade game recently. And it's kind of like it's a combination of a shooting game and a comic. You have to get out of the way of these things. Super fun, super light, 35. This is Elucity, which is a company I was talking about. That's owned by a theater distributor company. They built a Hologate film.
Yeah, who would do that?
And then they built a copy of Blue Guardians. It's called Ragnarok, which I like.
Oh, do I see zero
Yeah,
latency
right
in the
behind,
background?
yeah.
haven't heard much about them.
Yeah, I'll bring you up to speed on that. But they have basically you're a Viking ship and you're beating the drum. So this one was funny. So this is a company, Laser Tag. They had two headsets in the and the two headsets. I asked him, well, what are you doing? He's like, well, one of our customers wanted to do VR like laser tag, and we kind of thought it was a stupid idea, but we built it anyway. And like his whole sales pitch was crazy. But just to show like and it was another spot attraction. Here's another one from a company called Nordic VR or something, Nordic Game Distributors in Sweden. And I walked by this one and I totally dismissed it. And then I had 4 people tell me I should check it out. And I finally played it at the end. And by the way, I'll get to your questions. I lost Charlie, so let me know if you can still see me. Okay, cool.
I'm here.
I'll get to your questions at the end. But these guys were doing something really interesting. They had like 30 games. Each game was about a minute long or 2 minutes long. And you'd go in and pick, like we picked 4 games in a session. And we'd play one after another, after another, after another. And they were all super high quality, arcadey, easy to learn. And they're taking a very different approach, basically creating arcade mini games that you would play a whole bunch of, and they have 30 of them. And so I totally dismissed it because the package was so generic. Their approach to the business was very different than anything I'd seen, and I really liked it.
Put the arrow into the fire and line it up.
I love the looking for distributors. So this is Namco's PlayVR. Yeah, I'm still running backpacks. Small system, which makes no sense to me. I don't know why they don't go to Vive Wireless. And then this is Alter Eyes. These guys won some award from the show towards the end of the day, I found out. And it's another holo game, but it's not really a clone. It's beautiful. They built it. It's round. That's their differentiation. And they've got a bunch of social games. They've got kind of we played like a job simulator, like it's a mad dash game. But they did a really nice job. It's beautiful. It's about 120 grand, so they're pushing the level on the price. Mike, the rafting descent product was Mode Image, Modimage. And then I think the last one I have here is Holodeck VR. It's a company I've worked with for a long time, rebranded recently as Spree. And I won't get into the naming conventions because naming is hard to do and it's always controversial. But they partnered with IAAPA this year, and they've kind of finally come up with a turnkey package. And they have a new game that's called Anteater. And I took some video, somebody took some video of me and a bunch of other people playing. And it was.
Are you eating ants?
Ants, and we have long trunks that are like giant phallic things that we were making go around in circles.
Let's do it.
And it was so much fun, and this is what VR should be. It should just be fun and light and casual, and everybody's welcome.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot.
And so it's good to see the
getting
game
faster.
development going in different directions. Like that's what I loved about it. Is we're really seeing things go in different directions, and so that was exciting for me.
Meow Wolf did something where they turned you into a mouse. I thought that I was at South by 2 years ago, and I thought that was super compelling. It was an incomplete idea, but it showed the potential of doing that kind of, giving you a unique point of view that you could only do in VR.
Absolutely.
Right? It's that change of scale of the world is so powerful because it reminds us of what it was like to be small.
Yeah, and that's it. Playing with size, playing with scale, whether it's the size of the person, the size.
I mean, scale and changing scale is a major cinematic technique too. So it's not, VR is not the only medium that or not the first medium to take advantage of how dramatic that can be.
Yeah. So thanks, Joe, for posting that video, and I'll try to produce something a little bit higher quality with some voiceover for that and get that back up. I literally I just did that 5 minutes before the webinar started. So
So let's talk about zero latency. You said you were going to catch us up on
yeah.
what
So
they
I think just crossed the 30 location threshold. They are going to double the number of locations in Europe this year. I think they're opening Alberto told me they're going to open one a week.
And these are franchises,
they're licenses. Right? They're licensed locations. I don't think they technically franchise, and franchise has a specific term in a bunch of different countries. But and the Gen 2 system is really good. Like, I've played it, I love it. It's tight. I've talked to a bunch of their operators, and I think the PvP, the Soul Raiders game, there's some of them are struggling with. That's the other thing I'm seeing a lot of trend of a lot of game developers building player versus player. I played the new Hollow Gate player versus player game at the show, and it's still in development, so it's not polished yet. And what they did is you're on almost this like oil rig, and there's pipes, and you grab the pipes and you move locomotion up, down, around through pipes, and then you can hang and shoot. And the Chaos Jump guys released Reclaim, which is their PvP, and I've talked to them. I was like, "How's it doing in the field?" And like, everybody wants to play Chaos Jump, which is the co-op shooter, and so like, I wonder if people really want to play PvP games. I feel like that's a really small niche, and everybody's Vex arena was PvP. There was one of the PvP games, and it's hard to do PvP. And I'm not sure everybody wants to play it. And so that was another trend I seen that I don't know that I agree with. But zero latency is like, they're growing like weeds right now. I think their Gen 2 system, bringing that price down, into that $200,000 range from the $600,000 range, makes a big difference.
Yeah, I would imagine it does. And so, was anybody there from the Void or Dreamscape?
Nomadic wasn't there. Void wasn't there. Dreamscape wasn't there. True VR.
Why do you think that is? Because are they going to be doing anything in Orlando? Do you think?
Well, Nomadic has a location in Orlando. I'm sure they'll be there. The Void's never gone to IAAPA. They've never gone to a trade show, to my knowledge.
Right.
Yeah. So I think.
And I guess there wouldn't be much point in Dreamscape doing it, because they're depending on the cinema chains to roll them out, not on the kind of operators you see at IAAPA, although I don't know why they don't think their thing wouldn't be good in a theme park, because it is a theme park like attraction.
Well, I think the theme parks don't want to buy something that has low throughput. Like, they get their heads around.
Right, but I mean, there are other benefits to having it, right? You can offer it as a special admission. You could have people download your theme park's app and then make a reservation. There are ways to do it inside of a theme park that could be beneficial to an operator. I mean, that's what Knott's Berry Farm does with their VR Studios attraction. I forget what it's called. It's haunted.
Yeah, but they also I think that they also have like a standard arcade at Knott's Berry Farm where you go and play arcade.
Right, but they also have a standard arcade at Disneyland. Yeah. They've always had one in Tomorrowland. And, the machines take real money.
I did not know that.
Why you would, and by the way, it was always very poorly curated, in my opinion. They probably have cleaned that up, but that was, I haven't been to Disneyland in probably 10 years, so I don't know if it's there yet or not.
And look, you can clearly, the theme parks, at least Disney, with the new Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, where they have the lightsaber experience where you build it. Like, I think the throughput on that thing is measured in double digits an hour. It's tiny. But the per cap is $200. Right? And so, the theme parks, they'll tell me, oh, well, we're concerned. We're charging so much for admission. We don't want to charge, another thing for one attraction. And I'm like, and then Disney comes out and shows everybody how to do it. And so my guess is that's going to change the mentality of the theme parks, because per cap spending is that's where all their profit comes from. So I think we'll see that change in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. So, what are we expecting in Orlando that you didn't see in Paris?
We're going to see some of the endemic arcade game manufacturers bringing out VR. So Raw Thrills, which is a company that's founded by Eugene Jarvis, who's a legendary game designer. He designed Defender for, you'll remember.
Yeah.
And they're bringing out a VR product supposedly and I've heard it's an attraction, which is interesting because they've normally done just arcade games. And so I think you'll start to see more of the endemics adopting VR, which will validate the industry for the operators, and then you'll see more operators start to buy. And I think you're just going to see more.
And what do you think this is going to do to their cabinet business? Will VR start to supplant that?
Absolutely. Because the arcade games have been rinse and repeat now. There hasn't been an innovation in the arcade game business for years now.
Yeah, no, it seems to be all focused on the
IP,
brand.
it's the same rail mission, just the different characters and different levels, right?
Yeah.
So what's happening in AR? I get this question all the time, Charlie, like AR.
Well, I mean, on the entertainment side, it continues to be, Pokemon Go continues to be the 800-pound gorilla of the category. There is Angry Birds AR for iOS and Android, which is really quite wonderful. It's a spatial mobile game. It's the same Angry Birds that you love, but doing it spatially makes it walking around the little redoubt of the pigs. Is a really fun and interesting experience. It actually is similar to the experience you would have on the Magic Leap. So, I have no idea how well it's doing. We see very few true AR games because they're so much more expensive, and the audience for them is so underdeveloped, right? Nobody's really going to buy your game because it's an AR game, but they buy the game because it's Angry Birds. And obviously Pokemon Go continues to grow. It's a worldwide phenomenon. I think that Niantic has really accomplished almost everything they set out to do with that game. Harry Potter is off to a slow start. That does not surprise me. But a slow start for Niantic is $10 million the first month. So, that's still probably 10 times bigger than the next person on the list. So, there are some very big AR titles for mobile, but there's, relative to, Candy Crush, they're small.
What about wearables? Like everybody's waiting for, for the wearable AR glasses from Apple or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, what is the use case for that?
More notifications, more in your face.
I mean, is that what you want? Do you think that would make your life better?
This is as far as I'm willing to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think the iWatch is a good example of. I mean, I don't know. There are 20 million iWatches out there, which by Apple standards is not that many. I think anybody else would call it runaway success. Yeah, anybody else would call it a runaway success. I have heard that there's a headset under development for the Nintendo Switch, which might or might not be Virtual Boy all over again. Because how much computing power does the Switch really have? Maybe they're thinking it's going to be more cloud-based, but I think that they're going to introduce something in the next 12 months. At least that is what the tech writers are saying. I continue to think that look at the Oculus Quest and its pass-through capabilities, and when you really think about consumer AR, I think it's likely to come to us through the Oculus Go, right? It's likely to be a pass-through system rather than a see-through system. Now because it gives you control over every pixel, both the ones captured by the camera and the ones integrated from the game. Now, of course, you need a cloud computing environment, a latency-free cloud computing environment to have that, but that latency-free cloud computing environment is 3 years.
Two
It's
to
happening.
3 years away. Yeah.
You know, it's happening. So I think that is significant, and I think that see-through is good for enterprise because you don't want to be computing away and immersed and get run over by a forklift. So for the two things you hear from enterprise AR developers is their concerns about security and concerns about worker safety. So, you're seeing them developing exoskeletons, which I find super interesting because, you're working on an assembly line. I mean, a lot of people handle like heavy rivet guns and stuff on an assembly line, and it limits their effective working hours. They have to, job share because somebody can't do that all day or can't do it all day without starting to make a lot of mistakes, which are super costly. So, exoskeletons make those jobs way less fatiguing.
I think we're going to.
You can take a 50-pound riveted gun and turn it into a 15-pound lift. Somebody's going to be able to work the whole day as opposed to 2 hours and needing a break.
I think we're going to see. It's really interesting because I think we're going to start to see that those wearables. People ask me about haptic guns and haptic, hand tracking and all that other stuff. And I think that because these are so short, the throughput's an issue, but if we start seeing more proof points that people are willing to do 45-minute and 60-minute experiences in VR, Zero Latency in Melbourne is a 45-minute game. These guys in Lyon are running 45-minute games.
Well, sandbox VR experiences are
I think they're around 30 minutes. I think 25 to 30 minutes is like, if you look at the curve, most of it is 10 minutes, and then some of it is 25 minutes, and then very little of it is 45 minutes or an hour.
Right, and of course, it's hard to completely trust the operators because they include the.
I'm talking about in-game experience, like when I talk about this. And so Zero Latency Melbourne, exactly. 45 minutes in-game. The guys in 45 minutes. Seated 60 minutes.
Yeah, that really is puts you on the edge.
Up to 60 minutes.
Yeah, I think that puts you on the edge of what most people are.
But that's my point is, I think as the headsets get lighter and more comfortable, and people get more used to it, I think people are actually. I think, and the story is good, right? Like I think people will go longer, and when that happens, we can bolt more shit on them because the throughput becomes less of an issue. And if we bolt more shit on them, we make the experiences more compelling, and maybe ultimately we're doing 2-hour VR experiences in exoskeletons, and that.
Right. Well, the other thing is the cost of sensors are just falling through the floor, and that used to be the most. Those OptiTrack, 40 OptiTracks that you would need in an arena, suddenly disappear because of inside-out tracking and, cut the cost in half. To say nothing of the, install time and the operational complexity and the number of things that can go wrong.
And there's still our companies.
More parts means more failures.
Companies roll out OptiTrack-based systems and optical tracking systems, and I'm wondering at what point, will that just go away? But
you've got to believe that operators. Well, look at what Zero Latency did. I mean, they went to a much cheaper, lighter system, and that's not going to stop. 3 years from now, they'll make the next upgrade.
Peter Paddock said, you can easily play, Beat Saber for an hour and a half trying to beat a track on Expert, and people are doing it. I mean, they are staying longer. And so I think that narrative of VR experiences need to be short. I believe that's actually a false narrative. I think they need to be good enough to let people stay in them for a long time.
Yeah.
I think that's the challenge. And how long did you play through the whole Vader Immortal thing in one sitting? And that was what, 3 minutes?
It's about an hour.
About an hour.
It's about an hour.
So,
Yeah.
So Joanna Popper's here from HP. Thanks for joining, Joanna. And she talked about the Bose AR glasses. Have you done the Bose AR stuff, Charlie?
Oh yeah.
What is it? Explain it to us, because it's hard to imagine audio AR. What the fuck is that?
It's Alexa on your face, right? It's great for making phone calls. It's really advanced audio. They have an app store, just like Alexa does. And it's, a lot of functional things like, telling you the time, giving you time on demand, giving you NPR on demand. It's all voice controlled. They're coming out with frames that will accept prescription lenses, but there is no, it's all audio based. There's no, optical. It's not like the North. It's not throwing anything up into your field of view, which I think is a pretty valid strategy because there's not a lot that wearable head-mounted AR is going to do for you that sound
I don't want to be.
But I also think that sound can be based on AirPods. I don't think you need Bose to do spatial audio. But the Bose frames are I wouldn't call them attractive, but I wouldn't say they're not attractive either. They're somewhat innocuous, which is
They look
a
good on
big
Joanne.
advance. If you look at it closely, the wings are a little odd, but they've packed a lot of technology into a small package, and I think they're doing well. I mean, I again, it's a little bit like iWatch. The audience is still pretty limited for that. People have earbuds. They're not looking to carry around more devices. So when I use the Bose frames, it's very purposeful. Like I'm going for a walk with the dog, I'll wear Bose frames today. But otherwise, it's not a everyday product for me anyway. The way earpods are. So I sort of think the way augmented reality may come to us, and I wrote about this in my book Convergence, is that it may leverage the devices that we're already using. So we're already using AirPods. AirPods plus sensors plus better algorithms, which people call AI, means the kind of utility that we've been looking for from AR without the disruption that it potentially causes by showing you messages in your field of view while you're talking to somebody. I mean, that's just a crazy idea. Who wants that? And even Google Directions, people always talk about maps and wayfinding as being the killer app. Well, I don't know. Sound does a pretty good job of that. So is that enough to make me buy another device that I have to charge and I have to manage? I remember the early 90s, I'm sure you do, where in your backpack you had your camera and your music player and your digital I remember I had the digital, what the hell was that thing called? Before the BlackBerry, there was this digital assistant that had your calendar and your contacts in it. Palm Pilot. So I would walk around with this backpack full of different devices with different chargers. It was like a clown car when I got to my hotel room and started unpacking it. Of course, all those things exist inside your phone today. Yeah. So I don't know that people want to go back in time to those days. So I'm not convinced that there is a consumer use case for AR glasses. I know Magic Leap notwithstanding. By the way, Magic Leap may end up being a much better enterprise device than it ends up being a consumer device. I think that Roni and a lot of the people at that company are, people who come from the entertainment business. So that would represent a significant pivot, but I think that where they're going is to multiple devices. They'll have an enterprise device which doesn't have a steampunk thing going on. They'll have a much cheaper device. I don't know what we will call cheaper. Let's say $1,000-ish device for consumers. They haven't announced it yet. They were going to announce it in Q4 this year, and they pushed it to quote unquote sometime next year, which who knows, in Magic Leap speak, that could be 2 years or 3 years from now. But they are working on a consumer version that is smartphone based and far less expensive. It doesn't have the light pack, and they are trying not to hang their hat on the ML1 because I think they recognize the puck for consumers may be going toward pass-through. So although it's very hard to get details from them, they've got to be looking at that because I think pass-through could significantly impact the competitive landscape for consumer head-mounted AR. But again, consumer head-mounted AR, the Apple device, I hear they're moving in the direction of pass-through also, and that what they're going to deliver is the ultimate media consumption machine, sort of like iPod, and then they'll slowly iterate it to being more mobile and having more utility. And like the iWatch, the first ones are going to be wicked expensive and not offer enough utility to garner a mass market. But I don't think Apple cared that the original iWatch was $500 and something. The prices come down But by the time you add on the things you actually want on the watch, it's $500. So it doesn't come with a band.
Look, Bob Scoble was like just freaking out about this visor demo that he did, and how there's going to be this the eye visor or whatever. And do you have any insight into what he's talking about?
I do, but I continue to believe that Apple is slow walking this. There's no reason to go first.
They never go first.
And I think what we could see in a time frame, maybe it's, sometime next year. They didn't have a lot to say about wearable AR this year at the DC, but there are people were talking about there being clues in, the Apple AR technology. So ARKit 3.0 has some interesting technologies that have implications for head-mounted displays. But you know what Apple does? They'll make an announcement this time next year, and it'll be 2 years later before we actually see the product. So I would actually think that Facebook might even beat them to launching some kind of a head-mounted display. But again, I'm not sure what the value proposition is. I mean, may have the same problem that VR had at the beginning. Like, people are just going to look at it and say, "What is this for?"
And that's
what's in it for me? Because people are really freaking satisfied with these things, like really satisfied. So to ask them, and this one was easy, right? Because I had a flip phone, and I walked into Verizon, and they said, "Do you want another flip phone, or would you rather get email on your phone?" It's the same price. So I said, yeah, bring on the internet and bring on the email. And that was easy because they were taking something I was already doing and making it better. But telling me I have to buy a head-worn device and explain the benefits of that, that is hard. That is really hard. And I think for most people, it's still kind of a science fiction thing. So I think mobile AR is where it's at. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. I also think that we will see more wearables and we will see more AR, but we may not even be thinking about it as AR.
Yeah.
So, but again, as we said at the beginning of this conversation, I think LBE and the workplace is where both AR and VR will be introduced to most people, and ultimately through education.
And Joanna comments that that's like, if we don't think about it as AR, then that's the win, right? That's
right, exactly. When we stop thinking about it AR and we start thinking about it as a tool to do something that we want and we like.
Now, in January, when we did we talked a little bit about 5G and some of the challenges with 5G deployment, and we were laughing about AT&T saying that they were, doing 5G light, and so it's been 8 months now since that webinar, and what do you see happening in 5G and
well, I may be I will say this: I'm 20% less cynical than I was. The guys at Qualcomm have been on me because they obviously think that, of course, Qualcomm also makes the dual band modems that go in your phone. So I'm not saying they're a disinterested party, but they seem to they have a good argument, and I've been meaning to write about it. They have a good argument why it's going to be sooner than we were saying. They're saying 2 years. It's probably 5 years, but they actually have a pretty good argument for why it's actually going to be faster than the shift from 3G to 4G. Because we were talking about why is this going to be faster than that shift?
Yeah, but
and the answer lies in Qualcomm thinking that they're ahead of the curve, and the cost of converting or adding to the existing 4G repeaters is not that great, and it's not that hard, according to Qualcomm. So, I trust the guys at Qualcomm. I don't think they make stuff up. They certainly are not a telco that has invested, tens of billions of dollars in this and has to start owning up to their shareholders. But look, I'll choose to be optimistic on this one because, latency-free broadband is what VR and AR really need to, continue to propel their momentum past the chasm of
So you remember the VRLA show a couple of years ago where you texted me and said LBVR is going to have its own trough of disillusionment, right?
We're not there yet.
Slide that Qualcomm put up about how VR was going to follow the path of the mobile phone, and I thought it was really interesting.
Yes.
Well, but not only that, but that like this from the brick phone to the iPhone was 1983 to 2007. Now we all know that technology, the pace of innovation is increasing. But for them to suggest we were going to go from this to this in 3 years and compress this 20, 30-year cycle into a 5-year cycle is crazy. And so, you know, I'll take what they say about 3G, 5G with a grain of salt also.
Yeah, I think that I would not be starting a business based on there being, you know, broad availability of 5G in the next 2 years. That said, I hope that Qualcomm and AT&T and Verizon are right, and that it does happen that quickly, because it would be nothing but great for all of us.
And so what are the impacts going to be? Like, what are the major impacts going to be on VR when we get to 5G? Because the 855 chipset will have 5G native, and we're going to see those headsets in about 2 years, I think. And so what's going to happen?
Well, what Qualcomm was showing off at EWTS earlier this week was a proof of concept of a theory that Hugo Swart put forth at AWE, which is this notion of dual band, right? This is you'll remember this from the low bandwidth days of the 90s, where you shift some computing onto the internet, but you keep a lot of computing local, right? That's where you had those big CD-ROMs. There were no downloads. You had to buy the physical CD-ROM and upload from that onto your hard drive in order to play a more sophisticated game like MechWarrior. And a similar idea is that you're tethered, so you're getting a lot of computing power from a local device, but at the same time, the local device is also bringing in massive amounts of data via 5G. And so between the two, you know, the result is really dramatic. And that may be kind of the workaround for a slow acceptance of 5G, is that in many situations, you would do a dual kind of computing where you have a pre-download and a real-time download supplementing it, so that the 5G can be lightning fast and won't hang up, and will give you different options depending on really how fast your speed is. A little bit like how Netflix works, where if you're in a low bandwidth environment on your phone, you could still watch the same movie you would watch in higher fidelity at home when you have, you know, great connectivity and a giant screen. And you can handle a more dense signal.
And I was thinking, like, these are supercomputers, and every year Apple talks about the A11, A12, A13 chip, and every year the chips get more powerful and more memory and everything. But like once 5G happens and the computing can happen in the cloud, do these become really thin clients? Do our batteries have to weak?
No. I thought that at first, but actually what I think is they're going to fill them up with other stuff, right? So you'll have a bigger screen, you'll have a scrollable screen, you'll have, you know, better cameras that are larger, and you're going to do some computing on the phone and in the cloud the same way you do today for apps. It's just the balance is going to shift. So, you know, the idea that yes, theoretically you don't need a hard drive on a phone when you're in a ubiquitous 5G environment, but then you may drive to your house in the suburbs where you got
on an airplane,
1990s type connectivity, so, that's what I have here, and I'm in the middle of Los Angeles. I have to have a booster in my house. So, cell phone distribution, can be very spotty, even in areas where, it's a major urban area and you've got a lot of bandwidth in the air around you. It's not, it's a little bit selective depending on where you are and what street you're on. And so, having the option, the computer be smart enough to understand what kind of a situation you're in, would allow it to continue to provide those 5G-ish services, but it needs to have its hard drive, even if it's sometimes not really using it. Other times it will need to use it a lot.
And it's a multi-trillion-dollar investment globally to roll out the infrastructure, and that's not going to happen overnight. And so for it to be, it won't be ubiquitous until we get to 6G.
Yeah, probably. But again, I think most of the people on this call and in our business are, live in major urban centers. So all of us will probably see the benefit before most of the people in the world. Let's say, again, I hope Qualcomm is right. Obviously, I'm not getting 5G right now. Obviously, the modem I have in my apartment in New York that says 5G isn't really 5G. It's just slightly better Wi-Fi. It really has nothing to do with 5G. So again, that's what we talked about there. Branding confusion is certainly not helping. But look, VR fought through branding confusion, and 5G will fight through branding confusion. But it's certainly with the new technology with limited uptake, doesn't help, because any reason people can find to dismiss new technology and buying it and learning how to use it and integrating it into their lives, they will take.
Let's just stop there. Charlie.
All right.
Dude,
thanks, Bob. Always a pleasure.
We'll do it again in the new year, I'm sure.
Please.
And I'll see you in Orlando, right? Maybe we'll do something fun.
Absolutely. We'll have an encore of our fun last year.
So everybody, next week, Victor Machado from Post and Wall. We're going to be talking about marketing. And so if you're in the VR business and you need more customers, you need more leads, you need more sales, you need more tickets sold, make sure, make sure you follow Charlie Fink and buy his book Convergence on Amazon. There's the link right there. It is an amazing augmented book.
Yeah, it's an AR-enabled book, so you read it with your cell phone in your hand, and you reveal all sorts of, cartoons and entertainment and other mobile.
Everybody that comes over your house, it's the thing you'll be showing them for the next year. And so it's an amazing conversation piece as well. It's filled with amazing information. So I love you, Charlie. Enjoy LA, and
all right, guys.
in Orlando.
Have a great day.
All right, guys.
Thanks for listening. Bye.